What's up, y'all, and welcome to the first episode of the podcast in the year 2020. Today is January 2nd. It's a Thursday, right before the NFL playoffs get started. What a great year 2019 was. Had so much fun recording 34 total episodes. Before we get into the action today, I just want to say thank you to everyone who listened to the podcast in the year 2019, subscribed, left a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Does a lot of good for the podcast. Thank you to everyone for purchasing stickers. We'll talk more about that in a second. And thank you to everyone for telling your friends about the podcast. It means a lot. I also want to recognize a couple of people here. First, if we're giving out an award for the best podcast performance 2020 or 2019 from a guest, it has to go to no other than Leslie Neese, who is a former Survivor contestant. She had the most downloaded episode by a mile in the year 2019. She was an awesome guest. She got the best performance of the year. But if I'm going to go with a podcast MVP, someone that I could just rely on for 8 episodes all year round and just give me a steady 25 points every single night, it's got to be Jordan Morandini. And he joins me right now on the line. We're going to talk some NFL. How are you doing today, Jordan?
Jack, the best of ability is availability. Thank you very much for having me on. And last year was a ton of fun. I'm excited to be the first guest on the Jack Vita show here in 2020.
Yeah, so basically Leslie put up like 50 and 10 rebounds and dished out like 12 assists. And you were like a steady 25, 7, and 5 every single night I could count on you.
I'll take a 27, 7, and 5. That's a Hall of Fame career right there. I just got to keep that going for a couple more seasons, and I'll put myself in a really good spot.
Well, Jordan, you started off the podcast year with me last year, so it only makes sense for us to ring in the new year together this year. First of all, before we get to the content today, how were your holidays? You have a good Christmas, good New Year's?
Yeah, really good Christmas. Was able to go back to Philly and spend it with the family, so that was a ton of fun. And I actually just recently got back to Indy a couple days ago, so it was an extended stay. I got to go from like the 17th to like the 28th, 29th. So yeah, it was a ton of fun. How about you, Jack?
Yeah, it's been good. We've been off school for the last 2 weeks. I'm working over at Christian school here in Illinois, and honestly, a 2-week break now as an adult, now as a worker at a school and not a student myself, it feels like a really long break.
the time's not flying by maybe like it used to.
Yeah, I remember in college, I'd be like, I only get 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks, it would just be over in a second. Maybe it's because I live here at home and I'm not going home to somewhere, but I'm ready for this new year. I think 2020 is going to be a great year for the podcast. I missed podcasting over the last 10 days or so I'm glad to be back.
And Jack, you said you dropped 34 podcasts last year. Let's ask you a quick question before we dive into this. What's the goal on number of podcasts here in 2020?
All right, well, how about this? Let me flip it around to you before I answer.
Fair enough.
What are you predicting, an over-under of 34 in 2020?
I would say you're going to try and smash the over on that, and I would say close to one a week. Yeah. So maybe upper 40s, around 50 maybe.
Yeah, I think the thing is, you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So fair. I'm going to say my goal, let's say 45 for this year, and anything above that would be awesome. And I definitely would like to get into the 50s and have once every week, but who knows what's going to happen this year. So let's go with 45. How about that?
All right, that works. I'll give you a plus 11 from the year before. That's a successful second-year campaign, or third year. What is it?
Third year.
Third-year campaign now. We'll take that.
Think about this. I had about 3 months off last year, recovering from surgery and going into surgery and all that. So who knows what those numbers could have been? I mean, that's like what Yelich had to miss the last 2 weeks of the season, what his numbers could have been. Maybe he would have won an MVP.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely a very key, very important statistic there that you missed those 3. What was it? 3 weeks?
No, it's 3 months.
3 months. Yeah, so I'm definitely smashing the over there on the 34.
Yeah, it was like It was like end of January to around mid-April. So maybe 2.5 months. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
But, all right, Jordan, lastly, before we get into what we're going to be talking about today, you know about the stickers that I am selling right now that have the Jack Vita Show logo on them. If you live close, you can get them for free. If you live in Illinois, you want to pick them up, or I could drop them off at your house, and you can put a 3x3 sticker with the podcast logo on your water bottle, your laptop, whatever it is, and you can rep the podcast with pride. Jordan, I'm going to send some out to you. How's that sound?
That'll work. Let me know when you need my address.
All right, sounds good. So it's if you live far, it'll be $5, and you can let me know how many you want, and the price won't change unless you're asking for like 40 of them, because I only have like 100 left.
The shipping on 40 of them might be a little expensive as well.
So yeah, like if you want any number between 1 and 10, I can make that happen for $5. Just let me know, as long as you're going to put them to good use.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'll toss them on the laptop.
Perfect.
That'll work.
Great.
That'll work.
All right, Jordan, let's tell the folks what we're here to do today. So the last time I spoke with you, believe it or not, it was about 5 months ago on one of these podcasts. It was the end of August, maybe early September. We did our 4-part NFL preview podcast series, and now the NFL season is over. We tried a couple of times to check in the middle of the season, but we had some scheduling conflicts. I had bronchitis for a little bit, but we're back now. Season's over. So you know what we're going to do today? Let's look back on our predictions, and then we'll get everyone set for the first round of the NFL playoffs.
Yeah, even though we were in NFL season, I feel like I've had a full off season off the Jack Vita Show podcast. I'm refreshed. I'm not going to lie to you. I was a little worn down at the end of our 4-episode series.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, in a span of, 4 or 5 days, we put those together.
Yeah,
but yeah, like 10 days. I feel fresh. I'm ready to roll. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to knocking this episode out.
Yeah, it's funny when we finished that, I'm like, I can go a solid 3 weeks without NFL. And I'm going to be honest, this NFL season just kind of came and went for me. It differs for me each year how much of an investment I have, but I think the big thing for me is when your team, at least for me with the NFL, if your team has no shot at winning the Super Bowl, and you come into the season thinking that they can win the Super Bowl, and after week 1 you know that it's not going to happen, your excitement level drops very quickly.
Yeah, I think obviously with the Big Ben injury in week 1, that kind of probably ruined your NFL season for you. And for me as well, heading in, the Jags lost our quarterback very, very early in the season.
It was also week 1.
Yeah, it was indeed. Yeah. Now the Jags backup QB was a little more fun than the Steelers ended up being. But the Steelers did stay in it longer. But yeah, I completely agree with you. You're also not a big fantasy guy, which I think plays a toll in that too.
Yeah.
I'm very easily attached to fantasy football, which means even if the Jags aren't good, I can still pay attention pretty consistently because of it.
Hey, by the way, shout out to Michaela Perkins for winning our fantasy football league.
Yeah, down year for me. A down year for me, and shout out Evan too, because Evan's normally very good in that league too.
All right, so let's look back on some of these predictions that we made coming into the season. Jordan, I know you listened to this podcast at some point midway through the season, just as a refresher to see how our picks were holding up. And I haven't listened back since we recorded it, since I edited it and posted it. How are our picks looking right now in 2020?
Well, for the most part, Jack, I think we did a solid job. We missed a couple major ones, specifically one in the AFC. And do you want me to just jump to these teams?
Yeah.
Is that fine? Okay.
Yeah.
I think we were both really high on the Chargers and at least a playoff berth for them. So we both missed pretty badly on them. I do have a quick stat, though. I saw this, and this is a hilarious stat and very fitting for a team like the Chargers when you look at their personnel. But I saw if every one-score game was swapped around, so if every single game that they lost by one score, they won, the Chargers this year would have been 13-3.
Wow. Yeah, I saw something similar. I didn't know the number was that high.
It was 12 and maybe it was 12-3, 12-3, and it was heading into the last week of the season. But still, they ended up 5-11. So isn't that fitting for a Philip Rivers led team who you don't necessarily think is one of the most clutch QBs in the league to have a statistic like that? But that was one of our big misses.
Yeah.
2, me and you were not high on the Buffalo Bills.
Well, I had them at 8-8, so I was moderate on them.
You were higher, but you still weren't that high. But this is where we got to give a shout out to one of our podcast guests, Chase Beebe, who is a Buffalo Bills fan. So maybe objectively and maybe not objectively, was very high on the Bills heading in. But he said they were going 10-6, and they finished right at 10-6. So that's a heck of a call by Chase. So shout out to him. But that's another one of the ones that neither of us had in the playoffs that ended up making it. I believe we both also had the Steelers making the playoffs and winning the division.
Yeah.
That one has a little bit of an asterisk because of the Big Ben injury. But regardless, I think both of us missed on Baltimore this year. I'm going to be honest with you. I was dead wrong on them. I was not big on Lamar. I thought he got exposed a big time in that playoff game, and I thought it would carry into the season. Obviously, that was heavily incorrect.
I said something about Baltimore, and here's where I wasn't correct because I didn't have a take, but I basically said if Baltimore is correct on their assessment of Lamar Jackson, they have a very high ceiling, a much higher ceiling than they did with Joe Flacco, which was capped around that 6 to 10 wins threshold. If Lamar could develop into a star, they could emerge as a very electric, exciting team. Now, would I have put any money on that happening? No. But that's what happened.
Did you think even at his peak, where you thought even if he's as good as he could humanly possibly be, which I think we can agree he was this season, would you have said there's any chance Baltimore wins 14 games?
Well, I think the thing is, I would have, if you told me that Ben wasn't going to play, maybe
the Browns weren't great.
Well, I had the Browns at 6-10. I think I was dead right on the Browns.
Yeah, they ended up 6-10.
Yeah, and then we didn't think the Bengals were going to be a 1-win team. So I think the division collapsed a little bit and they capitalized on it. But the short answer, no. I don't think anyone saw 14 wins coming from this Baltimore team. But you know what was funny was I remember you guys were, mainly Evan, really excited about Joe Flacco in Denver. Remember that?
Let me be clear. I wasn't hugely excited about Joe Flacco in any way, shape, or form. Evan was very high on the Broncos. But I thought they'd be better. And I mean, they did win 7 games this year. So it wasn't like a huge, like they weren't a bad team. I feel like a lot of games they lost too were close. It seems like they were always in battles. But yeah, obviously the Flacco thing did not hit.
It was the same thing as that they had last year, pretty much, where they were in games. Their defense kept them in games, but they didn't. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then the only other AFC team, this Jags are a lot like the Steelers, where like the Foles injury kind of puts an asterisk on that season. And I think both of us had the Jags as playoff teams. I think you picked the Jags to win the division.
I did.
And I had them as a wild card team. But again, like they traded Ramsey in week 3 or week 4 or whatever. So it was a rebuilding effort after the Foles injury. And the only other thing is, you didn't have the Raiders in the playoffs, but you had them being better a year.
I think correct? I said somewhere around 7 or 8 wins, and you guys were like, 7 or 8 wins, Oakland Raiders. Oh my gosh, you just love Gruden. That's what it is. And I said, I think this team could be all right. I think they're moving in the right direction.
And the funny thing is, I think part of the reason why maybe I would have agreed with you would have been Antonio Brown being there.
Yeah, I know, right?
And that didn't end up being a factor whatsoever. So yeah, I think, for the most part, we did solid in the AFC. I think most of our division winners, although I guess Houston won the AFC South. I had the Titans winning the AFC South, their playoff team, but we
I had
both
the Texans
hit on
in the wild card.
Yeah, we both hit on the Chiefs. We both hit on the Pats. We missed in the North, and we both missed in the South in our division winners. but not a horrible job by us, I don't think.
No, I think,
back.
Yeah, I think we did pretty well. I wasn't extremely high on the Chargers, but I did have them as a playoff team. Evan also had the Chargers as a division winner in the AFC West.
Yep. Yeah, and looking at that too, looking at the Chargers too, they were 5-11 and their point differential was -8. So that screams that one score game stat. Ridiculous.
I guess the biggest disappointment would be the LA Rams. I believe I had them winning the Super Bowl, if not playing in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, and things did not come to fruition. I think we both were thinking Goff was going to take a step forward. It didn't quite happen.
Yeah, on the NFC side, they're a good one to talk about, especially since they made a very major win now move, making the Ramsey trade. If you would have told me this team would have added Jalen Ramsey in week 5, I definitely probably would have had them at least as a playoff team.
Yeah.
I mean, they did win 9 games, so it wasn't like they were a bad football team by any means. But yeah, definitely a disappointing season for them, especially given expectations.
Yeah, and then the other one, I know none of us on the NFC North podcast were really taking the bait on the Bears. I think we were scared we were going to offend Bears fans with our takes. CJ, I think, reluctantly had them as an NFC wildcard team. No one was super high on the Bears, but I think I had them at 8-8, which is where they ended up.
Yeah, and I had them sneaking in as my second wild card team just because I thought that defense was good enough. Maybe 9-7 is what I went with. I know I had them sneaking in as that second wild card team. But yeah, they're another one, clearly a step back from where they were a year ago as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that NFC North. Why don't you remind us of how we all went with that?
I would love to discuss the NFC North and our predictions beforehand. I mean, I had the Packers, and I talked heavily about this, and I know neither you or who else was on us with
CJ.
that? Was it CJ, yep. Neither you or CJ really agreed with my take on the Packers, but I thought maybe a fresh start for Rodgers was what he needed. And I thought the moves they made over the offseason to help that defense. I said Devontae Adams was going to prove he was the number 1 receiver in the division. He did. So really everything I talked about Packers-wise in the preseason came true. Now, I didn't have Minnesota as a playoff team, and I know you guys both had them winning the division, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're still a big Minnesota guy heading into this postseason, correct?
We'll talk about that today.
Okay.
We'll get to that. It's going to be interesting to talk about them. I do really like Kirk Cousins on a personal level, but all right, we'll talk about it. Talk about it.
Fair enough. Yeah, all 3 of us had the Lions as the 4th team in that division. So really the only mix-up. Did you have 2 playoff teams from that division or only one?
I only had one.
Only had one. I had the Bears making the playoffs as that second wild card, so I missed with that. And then did CJ have? I think CJ had a second playoff team from that division. Did he have the Bears sneak in?
Yeah, I think he did.
Okay, so there you go. So we both missed on the Bears, and then you guys both missed on the Pack in that division.
I want to talk about the Pack just for a second because we're not going to be talking about them a whole lot today because they're not playing this weekend because they got a bye, which I did not expect happening at all this year.
I don't know if I would have went that high on them either.
We're going to talk about the Pack next week. If you're going to join me next week on Monday, right?
That is the plan.
All right. So, yeah, Jordan's going to be back with me after the wild card round. We'll look ahead at the divisional round. So we'll talk more about Green Bay next week. But the main thing I just want to say is it is so great to have Aaron Rodgers back in the playoffs. It feels like it's been a while. But the last couple of years, I remember last year we were talking about those early rounds of the playoffs, and we're just like, there's stuff that's missing. There's no Aaron Rodgers. There's no Ben Roethlisberger. So to get Rodgers back in there is going to be a big, exciting storyline that we'll have at least in the second weekend of the NFL playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, when you talk about the guys that, the majority of people want to see, it's the Bradys, the Russell Wilsons, the Drew Brees, and almost 9 times out of 10, pretty much everybody includes Aaron Rodgers in that group. So I'm with you. It's good to see him back in the postseason. And wow, I really can't believe that team went 13-3. I was high on him, and I don't even think I was 13-3 high on them. So it is impressive that he's coming in, or he's not even playing this weekend with that bye.
Yeah, one good talking point here, and then we'll kind of run through the last part of this NFC. I think one storyline from this season was just how there wasn't a whole lot of a middle class team in some of these conferences. It was a lot of, and we saw this in Major League Baseball this year. There was a lot of 14-2, 13-3, 12-4, and then you got the 1-15 and 2-14, and there wasn't a whole lot of 7-9, 8-8, and the 7-9, 8-8 teams almost made the playoffs.
Yeah, none of them were even really full. Well, I guess in the NFC was a little bit different.
Yeah.
But in the AFC, there was we were at the point in that last week where even the Raiders at 7-8, if a certain scenario went how it could have, the Raiders would have been able to sneak into the playoffs at 8-8. So yeah, I would agree with you. It seems like, the top tier teams, especially in the NFC, I think this stands more true. But the top tier teams were just there wasn't much middle ground. It was either dominant or very, very mediocre. And I guess the only division that it doesn't really stand that case is the NFC East, and there was never really any dominant there.
Yeah. So any other thoughts? I guess San Francisco 49ers.
I don't think any of us had them in the playoffs.
I mean, they exceeded a lot of expectations that we had for them this year.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say. And I think I had them as the third best team in the NFC, which isn't really something to brag about. But I will say you had them as the fourth best team in the NFC West.
Yeah, I think I had them and the Cardinals right next to each other.
No, you took the Cardinals over the 49ers. I remember this.
I need to dive back in because I can't recall. I said I think the Cardinals have a chance to be fun and win 5 or 6 games. I think that's where I went with them. I can't remember if I had San Francisco. I hope I didn't, but I may have, just because I was not big on Jimmy G heading into the year at all.
All right, let's talk about our first slate of games that we're going to get on Saturday. And I like the way that they're doing this year. I don't know if they've ever done this before. They've got the AFC games on Saturday and the NFC games on Sunday. Do you like this, Jordan?
Yeah, and I think given the games we got, Jack, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was kind of debating. I was trying to figure out, before they announced the schedule and everything, but we knew the playoff teams. I was trying to figure out, which 2 games would be the night games, which 2 games would be the early games. And honestly, I think I was a little bit surprised Minnesota and New Orleans wasn't the night game if we're going to go with the night game for the NFC. But I thought the AFC, obviously Buffalo and Houston was going to be an early game, and Tennessee and New England made a lot of sense for a night game given Brady and given how hot the Titans have been. So yeah, I think it makes sense. And have they not done this in the past where it's NFC one day, AFC another? I feel like normally it's split.
Yeah, I cannot remember a time where they've done it, but it seems like it makes too much sense not to, because sometimes you got to wait and see who's going to win on the Sunday night. Is a 6 seed going to win, and that's going to upset the apple cart, and everything's going to be kind of flipped around, and you don't know who you're going to prepare for, and you've got a Sunday game or maybe even a Saturday game, and you don't know who you're playing until Sunday night.
Yeah, I think it works out really, really nicely. Now, given the schedule, does that would mean one of these teams from each will have one less day of rest, right? Whoever plays the 1 seeds?
Oh, you are correct, actually. That's strange. I would think they'd just stick with that format and do AFC Saturday and then NFC Sunday. Yeah,
that's a little bit of a disadvantage for whoever has to play the 1 seed, having to play, because if you play on that would be, where would that come in the case? That would be the NFC playing whoever plays San Francisco, correct?
Yeah, they've got the 1 seeds playing on Saturday, so it seems like it's a greater penalty to being the low seed coming through, but that's not really fair because you could have won your division and been the 4 seed, and now I guess maybe Philly should get penalized for winning that division.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, in that case, maybe you deserve one less day. But regardless, I think it's a good way to set it up. And yeah, I think it makes for a lot of fun heading into this weekend.
Yeah, so let's talk about these games that we have on Saturday. Let's start with the first game, Buffalo and Houston. Jordan, we did this last year. We had this format during the playoffs where we would rank which game we had as the most interesting to least interesting. Where does this game stack up in out of these 4 games for you?
I think this game makes a lot of sense to be the first game of the weekend, Jack.
Yeah.
I would have it as the 4th most interesting game. Now that I say that, though, I do think this game can go either way. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think this game is going to be close, but I also agree because there isn't a whole lot of star power there. Now, maybe Deshaun Watson is a guy we could talk about, but look, you got Brady as a headliner on a night game, and then you've got the NFC. I don't really want to say powerhouses, but just there's more stars.
Two of the best
there's
rosters.
Yeah, there's more. I think there's more excitement in the NFC games than there is in this game. But I think this is going to be a good game. I think part of it, the reason why we're not gaga over it, is because it's a second-year quarterback and a third-year quarterback. It could be a defensive battle. We don't really know what to expect out of these quarterbacks in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I would say specifically on the Josh Allen side of things, he's an extreme wild card, I think, heading into this playoffs. But I will say, and before we hop too deep into this game, I will say I do think Buffalo matches up pretty well with Houston, really across the board, because they have the great corner in Tre'Davious White to handle Hopkins. And, Houston's defense really hasn't been that great all year, Jack. And this isn't a Buffalo offense that really lights it up.
Yeah, and really, I think the other part is I don't really know what to make of either of these teams because both these teams have had some big signature wins. You look at the Texans beat the Patriots. They also beat the Chiefs. And then the Bills were a team that we did not think was going to make the playoffs, and they got in there with 10 wins. A lot of people were ripping on their schedule for the first part of the season, but I think they cemented their place with that win against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. And so, yeah, this is just a weird one all across the board.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, Houston won the AFC South with one of the toughest schedules in football. I remember we were discussing it on the preseason podcast, and we were looking at Houston's schedule. It's brutal, and I think that's kind of why we shied away from them maybe a little bit. I know you had them as a wild card team, but still, it was very impressive that they ended up winning the division with the schedule. They had some monster wins. They beat the Pats. They beat the Chiefs, as you mentioned. And then on the Buffalo side of things, it's a little bit different because in a way, Buffalo had one of the 4 easiest schedules in football, post, everybody's records being laid out. So they kind of took advantage of an easier schedule. You touched on signature wins, like the Steelers was a good win. They also won at Dallas. And really their only other, great win, I would say, was at Tennessee. That would be considered the other big win. So they didn't necessarily beat many powerhouses. But again, you can only beat who's on your schedule. So shout out to the Bills for taking advantage of that schedule and sneaking into the playoffs at 10-6. Yeah,
and I think we also saw Josh Allen come into his own over the course of the season. There was a lot of progression. Year 2 and year 1, it was night and day. He had a really, really nice growth process as this season went along. And I was glad he got that moment on the Thanksgiving game on primetime in Dallas, and a lot of people sort of got to see this guy shine.
Yeah, he was. And if you check Twitter during that game, the entire Buffalo fan base was letting it be known that this was Josh Allen's kind of coming out party into the league. But yeah, I would agree with that. I think Josh Allen took a lot of really big steps forward this year. We touched on, when we were talking Buffalo in the preseason, we're like, Josh Allen's a guy who's a great runner, and can he take a step forward in his pass game? And, obviously a year ago in his 12 or 11 starts, he had 10 TDs and 12 picks. This year he started all 16 games and only had 9 picks. So definitely progressed, took care of the football better. And his 2 weapons, John Brown and Cole Beasley, we touched on in the preseason too. Those were big for his progression as well.
All right. Anything else on this game before you want to make a pick?
The only other thing I think it's important to note, J.J. Watt is active for this game. He tore his pec not that long ago. But I think I don't know if they tossed him on the IR to return, but I don't know if he's 100%. He's not going to be 100% in this game, but they did activate him, so he has a possibility of playing and making an impact here.
All right, I want to hear your pick, and then I'll make mine.
I'm not going to lie to you, Jack. Houston, even though they have those big signature wins, really all year they didn't impress me very much. And I think Buffalo is coming in here with some momentum. I like the Bills in this game. I like the Bills in kind of a lower scoring affair. I think the winning teams in the low 20s. Wouldn't be surprised if the losing teams in the teens. I like the Bills 21-17.
I'm laughing because I was right about to say Texans 21-17.
And I think that's the great thing about this game. And even though it's the first game and, it's number 4 on both of our quote unquote intriguing lists, I just think this game could go either way. I don't think there's a scenario where one of these two teams blows each other out.
Yeah, I like the home field here for Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few of these games. Well, there are 2 of these games, I should say, where I'm split on, and I favor the home team in these instances. I think Deshaun Watson is going to show up to play after his performance last year left a lot more to be desired. And I think he's heard about it. He's spent all offseason thinking about it. I think Deshaun Watson's going to have a good game, and he's going to need to have a good game in order for them to win. I think they're going to get the job done at home, but am I confident in this? Not at all. I think this would, if you were doing confidence picks, this would be like 4th. My 3 or 4. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's the big advantage Houston has. I think obviously Deshaun Watson's the much better quarterback. Let me ask you this while you were on the topic of home field. How would you rank Houston's home field advantage compared to a lot of teams in the NFL? Because to me, I just don't think it's nearly as big as an advantage there as it is in a lot of these places. If I look at the rest of the playoff teams, I think I would rank them as maybe the weakest home field advantage of any, apart from maybe the Titans.
Okay, I would have to look through all the teams. I think they definitely would be in the lowest third of this. But here's what I will say. Their home field, for them to get a game at home field, I think is very important for them because they're an arena team. They're in a warm climate. So for them not to have to go out to Buffalo,
True.
I think just the fact that they're going to have that is going to add an extra oomph for them going into this game. So I think the fact that they don't have to go, and maybe next week they're going to have to play in Baltimore, or maybe next week they're going to have to play in let's see, Kansas City. Yeah, maybe that's a little different, and those 2 places are very, very different. Baltimore's going to be cold. Kansas City shows up like no other home team in this league. So I think for them, they're going to take advantage of just being safe at home. I think there's safety. There's not going to be a huge advantage, but I think there's comfort.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I was just curious on how powerful you thought Houston's home field advantage truly was. Yeah, a couple quick notes before we probably move on from this game. I touched on the Tre'Davious White on Hopkins matchup. I think that's huge because really if Will Fuller, and he's questionable in this game and probably not going to be at 100%, and he's been knocked out of a lot of games with the hamstring groin issue that he's had all season. If he's not good to go, if they're able to shut down Hopkins, there's not many guys that scare you in this Houston offense. So that could make things tougher on Deshaun. So that's one of the key matchups I think to discuss. And 2, I think Buffalo is able to run the ball in this matchup. Devin Singletary, I think, has a good game. They have a nice little combination 1-2 punch with him and Gore in the backfield. I think Josh Allen's able to extend some plays and get some big runs in this game as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if Buffalo wins the time of possession in this game, Jay.
Yeah.
And I think that could be the key to a Buffalo quote-unquote upset here in Houston.
Yeah, this is one that I'm just not super opinionated on, so I can really see it going either way. I will favor the home team. I like your points. Let's talk about the main event on Saturday night. This is a good game, and you know what I think is an underrated storyline with this game? I know everyone's talking about Patriots are done, Patriots are over the hill, and Tennessee's hot. Tannehill's been awesome lately. And we'll get to all of that. How about the fact Belichick and the Patriots, it seems like games where they struggle are games against former assistants of Bills. So Vrabel, with his history in the Patriot system, playing there. And then you've got Bill O'Brien and the Texans. They beat the Patriots earlier this year. And then another example is Matt Patricia's Lions beat the Patriots last year. So it seems like some of these guys who come from the inside seem to know how to beat the Patriots. And that's something that I'm really looking out for this week with Mike Vrabel.
Do you think that plays a big factor this week?
I think it's going to keep the game close. Now, I guess I can say it right now. I am going with the Patriots in this game. I like them at home, and I also like them in situations where people write them off. I think they always seem to bounce back from those situations and remind us of why they're the Patriots. And so I think the Patriots are going to win this game, but I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to come down to the last possession.
I think this is a close game, too. You touched on home field a little bit there. I did happen to get a weather update from our good friend Connor Ennis on this game heading into this weekend. He did say there's a solid chance of snow, which I think if there is, that's a big advantage Patriots.
Yeah.
Given how they've performed, and maybe Brady specifically in the snow in the past. Now, you may look at that and be like, wait, maybe that is a Derrick Henry advantage in this matchup. If they're able to, if Tennessee's able to really run the football. But I think a key part of how good Tennessee's offense has been is their ability to open things up. A.J. Brown, the rookie receiver for them, has been absolutely fantastic. He's right in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. They have a nice emerging tight end. They lost Delaney Walker earlier in the season to an ankle injury, I think, and he was done for the year. Jonnu Smith is a young guy, athletic, talented tight end who's filled in really well for him. They have a nice, very high pick. He was a 5th overall pick. Corey Davis is their number 2 receiver now with the emergence of A.J. Brown. So I think the passing game and how good Tannehill's been, Jack, lately has kind of opened things up because teams can't just stuff the box against Derrick Henry when you have those playmakers in the pass game. So I do think the weather can be a big key to this game. But if the Titans aren't able to, maybe it snows, not horribly, but enough to impact the passing game in a little bit. I think that could allow advantage Patriots to maybe stuff the box a little bit extra as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really good game. I've got a trivia question here for you, Jordan. Let me pull this up real quick.
Put me on the spot.
Do you know the last time the Patriots played in the wild card round of the playoffs?
Ooh, this is the first time in at least 10 years.
That's correct.
Oh, was it exactly 10?
Yes.
Okay. Because I saw a tweet about it, so I did cheat a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, you didn't cheat. You just accidentally studied for it.
Accidentally came across the answer. But yeah, it is very, very odd to see them in this wild card game, Jack.
They have, I don't know how many times they've made the playoffs over the last 18 years or whatever. Probably like 15 would be my guess. Maybe 16.
Yeah.
I know there were 2 that they missed for sure. Mm-hmm. And there have only been 3 times over that whole stretch that they have played in the wild card round. The last one was 2009 when they played the Ravens, and they actually got blown out by the Ravens. If you might not remember that.
I do not.
I remember watching that game and just being like, holy smokes. And I think the Ravens ended up playing the Steelers in the playoffs that year. I'm not entirely sure. But the Ravens, so the Ravens blew them out 33-14. And at that point, that was when people were like, okay, that's the end of the Patriots era.
It was a fun run.
The Dolphins had won the division the year before with 11 wins. People were thinking that was it. And now here we are 10 years later, and they've won 3 other Super Bowls.
And we're still wondering, Jack, when the end is coming.
I've got 2 other ones in 05 and 06. In 05, they played the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that's very near and dear to your heart. Do you remember the outcome of that game?
Oh, geez, no.
It was 28-3. Patriots got the win. I actually think that was around that time. I remember this, Jordan. You might not. But Byron Leftwich was the franchise quarterback, and he was hurt a lot. And David Garrard came in, and Garrard was fantastic. He was really good. So there was a controversy of who was going to play in that game, and they brought Garrard out in the second half, and he looked a lot better than Byron Leftwich did.
Yeah, and David Garrard was actually, if you rank my Jaguar quarterbacks for the past couple of years, or past 15 years, he would be decently high on that list, Jack.
He might be the best one. He was good.
Yeah, apart from Brunel, I would probably have him. Yeah, probably number two.
Well, Brunel, I mean, you said 15 years.
Well,
Brunel's
yeah,
like
yeah,
20
fair enough,
years.
fair enough, fair enough. I always think Brunel played because that was the more enjoyable Jacksonville Jaguar times. I try and keep those seasons as close as possible.
So the Patriots won that game, went on to lose in the division round to a team that they seemingly always struggled with in this era, at least on the road in Denver. They lost 27-13 to a Jake Plummer-led team.
Okay.
Some good NFL history there. And I got one more, but go ahead.
Give me the last one before I start making my points.
The last one, they played in the wild card round in 2006, which was the year that the Colts ended up beating them in the AFC Championship game, where the Patriots were in Indy. They were up 18, ended up losing 38-34. They did, however, win the wild card round 37-16 over the Jets.
So they're 2-1 in the Belichick era in the wild card round,
yes,
correct?
But
okay.
They have never made it to the Super Bowl.
Interesting.
When they've played in the wild card round.
Interesting. Yeah, you look at, it's a monster advantage always for Bill to get 2 weeks to prepare for anyone. So now he gets the 1 week in the wild card game. You touched on the coaching matchup in this, and I think it's a very interesting coaching matchup with the Vrabel connection. Because Vrabel's a guy who early in this season, I'm forced to follow Titans fans a lot with being good friends with Connor and them being in our division. And Titans fans were been happy with him. And then all of a sudden, obviously Tannehill helped turn it around and they're huge on him. I do think this is a heavy coaching mismatch. And it almost always is when you're going against Bill Belichick. But this is a guy in Vrabel who this is his first playoff game as a head coach, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
They signed him last year, yes.
Last year was his first year.
Yep. So I think it's a heavy coaching matchup. Also, I do think New England's defense is a lot better than Tennessee's. Tennessee has a couple injuries in the secondary. Malcolm Butler's out for the year. I think they're getting their second corner, Adoree Jackson, back. But I think on the offensive side of the ball, so there's two advantages for New England there. I think on the offensive side of the ball, I would definitely give the edge to Tennessee. For as good as Derrick Henry was this year, Tannehill. Look, Jack, I get it. You have Brady in the playoffs, but he just doesn't have the weapons. Tannehill has outplayed Brady heavily since he's taken over this team. Obviously, I'm giving playoff Tom probably the QB advantage, especially if there's snow in this matchup. But I just think the Titans' offense as a whole, weapon-wise, is a lot better than New England's. Apart from Julian Edelman, and how scary is Julian Edelman? Nobody really scares me in this Patriots offense, Jack.
Fair points.
A lot of what they do comes from their halfbacks, so I would expect James White to be heavily involved here, maybe some Rex Burkhead. But yeah, I would give the advantage, I think, on the offensive side of the ball to Tennessee. Now, here's one quick point before I let you take over, Jack, that I wanted to note, and I think this is a huge, huge deal in this game. The Titans this year gave up 56 sacks to their quarterbacks. That's third in the league, third most in the league. And on the Patriots side of the ball, they're always great at this. 26th in the league, only allowed 28 sacks. So half of the sacks the Pats allowed compared to the Titans. I think that is a huge, huge deal in this game. One of the ways you kind of can beat Brady, you have to be able to get to him. And it's always tough to do because of how quick he gets the football out. But I think that's a huge, huge deal because we both know how much sacks can change possessions. A big second and 8 turns into a 3rd and 16 from a sack. I think that is one key statistic to look out for. And I think how well both defensive lines play, and I guess on the other flip side, how well both offensive lines play is a huge, huge key in this game.
Yeah, I really do like the Patriots defense in this game for a lot of reasons. It's at Foxborough. You mentioned those numbers. So I think those are good numbers to look at. I also want to bring up one other point that we haven't touched on, and that's the history between these two teams. They actually played each other in the divisional round 2 years ago. Patriots won 35-14, but that was before the start of the Mike Vrabel era.
And the Ryan Tannehill era. That was the Marcus Mariota era.
You could not wait to drag Mariota some way in this podcast.
Hey, he won a playoff game this decade.
He did.
He deserves some respect.
He did. So I also misspoke. Vrabel was never an assistant with the Patriots, but he did come from the inside, played there for 8-9 years. So lots of interesting stuff to look at. It's time to make a pick, though, Jordan. Who you got?
I like the Pats in a close one. The spread in this game, and we don't want to make big deals of spreads, but it's 5.5. I think I would take the Titans with the 5.5. But I think the Pats win a close one here. I like them. I like them 24-21, maybe a late Brady drive.
Yeah, that's right around where I had them. I mean, I think this could be 17-14, 20-17, 24-21. Any of those scores I think would really be fitting. I don't think it's going to be a huge offensive game, especially if there's snow. And I do think I think it will be a one-score game though. So I think that it will be an under a 5.5 point victory for the Pats.
Would a Titans win on Saturday night surprise you?
So I guess what I would say, Jordan, my assessment of the Patriots is I think this week they will win, and it won't be surprising that they win. While I don't think they're going to play in the Super Bowl, and they could, we'll see, but I think they're going to have a win in these playoffs that's going to remind us of who they are. And maybe that'll happen next week. We'll see when we get there. But I think they're very capable of playing spoiler to someone. And again, this Patriots team started out 9-0, and here they are. And I know they came into the playoffs a little slowly. I don't want to say they limped in, but yeah, I do think if they had gotten that first round bye and that second round home field, that would make a world of difference for them in these playoffs. But maybe it's time for Bill and Tom to do it, to win once again in a new fashion, because they keep doing that this decade.
Yeah, I will say Bill's going to have to do a really, really good coaching job to make it all the way through this playoffs. But I would agree with you. And I think obviously having Bill comboed with the home game in round one gives them a great chance to beat Tennessee.
Yeah. So would you be surprised if the Titans won?
As hot as the Titans have been, no. Because I do think the game, if the Titans are able to get up early, I think it's a really good scenario for them where they're able to kind of focus on getting Henry going, use the play action probably more. I don't know how well this New England team is built to play from behind. So I wouldn't say it would surprise me. No, I don't think so. As good as the Titans have been as of late, I don't think it would be shocking, but I am obviously picking New England in this game.
All right. So you ready to go over to the NFC side?
Let's do it.
All right. So we'll talk about, again, we'll go in chronological order of these games. So you were surprised that this was the early game, and I am too, to tell you the truth. I'm also surprised by the point spread a little bit. I think that the Vikings deserve a little more respect. Now, I'm not overly high on the Vikings in this matchup, but the Saints are hosting the Vikings. Saints 13-3, and kind of a quiet year from the Saints. It seemed like they were a little under the radar this year as a 13-3 team.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder why.
Yeah.
As good as they, I mean, look, I get it. Obviously, you want to talk about something new, and the Saints have been pretty consistent over the past couple of years. So San Fran and obviously Green Bay being back there makes, a lot of sense that they got a lot of publicity throughout the year. But I tell you what, Jack, this is a really, really good Saints roster, and one that heading into this matchup this weekend has been clicking the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. They are favored by 7.5 points at home against the Vikings. I would have guessed this would be the main event too, because we're going to talk about the second game in a little bit. But in the second game, you have a team that went 9-7 that's hosting a home playoff game. Another team that I haven't been overly excited by either in the Seahawks. Now, I do think that's going to be a closer game, but I think there's a bigger storyline that you have with this Vikings-Saints game. I mean, you got Breeze in there. You got the whole can Kirk Cousins come through in the playoffs. That story has become a really big one, And it almost seems like people want to see Kirk fail for whatever reason. He's taken a beating over the last couple of years, and he had a great year this year, by the way. So I'm a little surprised by it, especially considering the miracle in Minnesota that occurred 2 years ago between these two teams.
Yeah, and to be quite honest with you, Jack, you touched on the other two teams. I think I would take Minnesota over both of the teams in the other game.
Yeah, I would too.
If it were to be seeded that way. And you look at one quick note on Minnesota too, compared to some of these other NFC teams, they were fourth in the NFC in point differential. So they were dominating some teams this year. And one of those teams ahead of them, by the way, was the Cowboys. So they're third in point differential in terms of playoff teams with only the Niners and the Saints ahead of them. So this is, tell you what, this is a really, really good Vikings roster. I think you said you would agree you would have taken Kirk in Minnesota over either of the teams in the other game?
Yeah, I would, even if the Vikings were on the road, to tell you the truth.
Yeah,
I haven't. We're going to talk about these other two teams in a little bit, but I mean, Kirk this year, I think he should have been a Pro Bowl quarterback. I mean, you could look at if you were going to list the top 5 NFC quarterbacks this year, you got to go obviously. Breeze and Rodgers got in the Pro Bowl, and Russell Wilson got in, and all deservedly so. I mean, Rodgers, I think from a numbers perspective, Kirk did a little more than Rodgers did. Now, Rodgers won those games against Kirk, so it's not there's something to be outraged by. But if you look at Russell and Kirk, I think those guys have been really, really similar from a numbers standpoint. Now, Russell has done a lot more in the playoffs, and he's won a Super Bowl. But I like the link that those two guys have coming from the Big Ten, playing each other in college, being in the same draft. So I would have loved to see a Seahawks-Vikings game. I think Kirk gets disrespected a little bit. One thing that was interesting, I was looking at Pro Football Focus's offensive line rankings for the season, and it talked about the Vikings' offensive line really declining as the season went on, and that was why Kirk struggled in Green Bay, because he had way less time to throw than he did earlier in the season. And maybe that's a testament to the Packers' front seven and what they were doing against the Vikings. But I think the Vikings have a really good roster. I think Kirk had a season where he could be top 5 in MVP votes. Now, I don't know if he's going to get those votes because of his reputation, but I think Kirk's success this year was a little underrated.
Yeah, I would agree. I thought he was honestly exactly what you thought he was going to be heading into this season. Where would you rate him on the NFC side of these 6 teams in terms of QB? I would probably have him 5th ahead of only Garoppolo.
Whoa, okay. So I think, and this is a good one, let's talk about these playoffs.
Yep.
I think, and here's where you and I are going to disagree on something. I think there's 3 different classes of quarterbacks in these playoffs. Like, you've got the legends, you got Brady, you've got Rodgers, you've got Breeze. And I would even offer to put Mahomes in this category, just in terms of... I think
that's fair.
Yeah, and not to say that he's a legend, but these are the guys that I trust the most in these playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then you've got a lot of guys who you don't know what they're going to be because they're rookies, they're young in their careers, they haven't gotten a whole lot of playoff starts, and you don't know what Josh Allen's going to be in these playoffs. You don't know what Deshaun Watson's going to be in these playoffs. Who else would you have in this category?
I would probably, in the Legends group, you have to debate Russell Wilson too.
Well, I'm going to get to that in a second.
Okay.
But who would you put in this group?
The second tier, kind of the
no,
young...
these are the third tier.
Oh, the third tier guys? So that would be the lowest tier in the playoffs?
Basically, these are the unknown. You don't know what Garoppolo's going to do.
You don't know what Garoppolo is going to do. I'm not sold on what Tannehill is going to do in a playoff game. I think Wentz kind of fits in this.
Yeah.
Just because of the playoff runs when they've had them, it has been Foles. And I really don't know what Cousins is going to give me either. I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay, so then I think Russell Wilson...
And Josh Allen as well, sorry.
Russell Wilson is perfectly somewhere in between these two groups. Now much closer to the Legends category, but not quite in the Legends category. But Russell Wilson, and we're going to talk about Seattle in a little bit, I think Kirk isn't too far away from Russell Wilson in terms of where these quarterbacks stack up. I think those guys are a lot more similar than people might notice. And I think the thing is, I'm talking about 2019. I'm not talking about 2014 when Kirk was on the bench and Russell was winning a Super Bowl. So we're going to talk about Seattle in a little bit, but what do you think about that?
I would give a clear edge to Russell Wilson. And obviously, I think he's more mobile. I think he does more with less. Now, that's not really Kirk's fault for having the targets. But I don't know if you put Kirk on the Seattle team, if they win 11 games this year. I don't think they do. So I think Russ is a more valuable QB. I would definitely give him a decent edge over Kirk.
Okay.
Especially give it, and I mean, Russ has done it at the biggest stages too. He's won some big playoff games too.
Okay, so I might have to save some of my Russ takes for the next game.
Okay.
But let's come back to this one.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Kirk he hasn't won a big game, but he's also, with the Redskins, he didn't have great teams. And I think he made the Redskins a little better, got the Redskins into the playoffs. Now, this is tough because, like you said, if the Vikings were playing any of these other two, they were playing either of these other two teams, I would have taken them. The thing is, this point spread is 7.5. I think the Vikings are going to lose by like 4 or 5, something like that. Like a 35-31 game wouldn't surprise me. I think it's going to be close, and I think we're going to get the classic take of Kirk can't win the big one. But I think it's more so a testament to how good this Saints team is. I think the Saints team is being slept on, and they're an early favorite of mine to get all the way to the Super Bowl.
Jack, you're stealing my takes before I even have a chance to unleash. I'm going to say right now, I love the Saints out of the NFC, and they were my choice in our preseason. I picked them in the past. Yeah. I feel a lot more confident in the Saints' ability to get back or get there than I do the Pats on the AFC side. Look, I love everything about this Saints team. I love the one that they're coming in on fire. Oh my God, their last 4 games, they've dropped 42, 38, 34, and 46 offensively. And they dropped 46. They lost that game, the San Francisco, 48-46. They dropped 46 points on that San Francisco defense, and then dropped 38 more on Tennessee 2 weeks ago. So I want to say Minnesota's able to keep this close, and I think 7, and like you said, 7.5. I think they're able to keep it within that. But I do think the Saints win this game. I just think it's such a nightmare matchup for Minnesota, because if you're ranking the overall rosters in the NFC, I would have Minnesota right near the top. I would probably have the Saints ahead of them. And the only other one, if you're looking at rosters, probably San Francisco's roster as a whole. But gosh, it's a brutal matchup for Minnesota, really, because like I said, I'm with you. I would pick them over Seattle or Philly as well, but I do think the Saints win this ball game.
Yeah, and I also think Minnesota's capable of going into Lambeau and getting a win, even though they didn't do it this year. They did it last year, and now this is a different Packers team than last year, clearly. I also think they're capable of beating San Francisco. I just think, like you said, this is a really tough draw for them. And the Saints are my favorite. I'll say it right now. They are my favorite to get to the Super Bowl in the NFC side. So I just think they're running into a juggernaut. It's the wrong timing. It's also
the wrong place.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think this is not an indictment on Kirk's shortcomings. I think it's more just the fact that the Saints are a really dang good team and my favorite on the NFC side.
They have this as the highest over-under, so it's expected to be probably a little bit of a high-scoring game. And I can see that. I like maybe 31-24 Saints in this one.
Yeah, so just barely underneath that 7.5.
Right around the 7, yeah.
There's some sports books that have it at 8, by the way, so they're expecting more than one score of a win. I think it will be a one-score game. I'm going to go 35-31. I think what's going to happen, this is I'm seeing it right now. The Vikings have a chance to come down and win the game, and there's going to be a turnover on downs around midfield.
Your nightmare scenario as a Kirk Cousins supporter.
And it's going to be sad because you're going to see Kirk is going to look sad, and you're going to see all these Twitter people, LMAO, Kirk Cousins again, he can't do it. But the Saints they're due to beat this team too, and they're due for some good things to happen to them after what happened to them the last 2 years in the playoffs.
That's fair. I think the Saints are up maybe 2 scores. Minnesota scores, with 5 minutes or something to go, and then doesn't get an opportunity, whether they try the onside or whatever. I think the Saints hold on by, let's stick with my 31-24.
All right, and so now we get the last game. For all of you that enjoyed this very high-scoring matchup between two of the best rosters in the NFC, we've got a special bonus treat for you. How would you like the 9-7 Philadelphia Eagles hosting a game against the Seahawks, who came in as a wild card team? And I know a lot of people are really high on the Seahawks this year. I'm not one of those people, but I just don't think this is going to be a super exciting. It's going to be a close game. I think it will be a good game. Probably the game that out of these 4, I wouldn't say I'm most interested in. This is really one of those of the 4 games that I have no idea who's going to win this game.
I think of the 4, this is well, I guess, we talked about this a little bit with the Bills in Houston. Yeah. But according to the spread, this is the closest of the 4 matchups. It's a 1.5 point, and Philly's actually favored at home in this game.
I don't think that's crazy, to tell you the truth.
I don't think it's crazy either. I think given the way both of these teams have looked, I think that kind of makes sense. Let's dive into it here.
Yeah.
The Eagles, they snuck their way in. This is not a very good football team from overall. They do have their spots where they're good, and they've won 4 straight heading in, so they are coming in playing good football. But their last 4 wins, the 4 wins they had were Giants, Redskins, Cowboys, Giants. So 4 through 3, bad NFC East football teams. I will say at Philly is a very strong home field advantage. That is a place where Seahawks players are going to hear things that you would never want to hear on a football field. I've been in that stadium multiple times. I was actually there. I was there for the game against the Cowboys, and that was a really, really fun game to be at, obviously.
Oh, sick.
But it is a very tough environment, but it's an environment that isn't scared to boo their teams either. So if you see Seattle get up 10-0 or 14-0 early, and Wentz has a 3-and-out or something, don't be surprised if the fans turn on this roster in performance. I wouldn't be surprised. But okay, let's dive in more here. It's a very strong home field advantage. So I'm a little surprised, Jack. I'm not too surprised, but I am a little surprised that Philly's favored in this game. I thought maybe it'd be like a point or something, 1.5 towards the Philly way. I do think Seattle's the better team, and
you mean the Seattle way?
Yes. Yeah, I thought Philly would be -1 point or minus a 1.5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because right now Philly's +1.5, so I thought that would be. Okay. I thought it would be a swing the other way. But I you look at this, and I think where Vegas is looking at this, and where I'm kind of looking at it too, is Seattle has the better quarterback, and I think this is. What do you think, Jack? I think this could be the best coaching matchup of this first round. I like
that.
I think it's the best coaching matchup of this first round.
Okay, so
Would you agree?
I think the other one I look at is the Zimmer and Peyton is a pretty dang good matchup too. But I think my favorite would be the Bill versus Vrabel.
Okay, gotcha. I think if you're talking, if we're ranking these coaches, which we won't take the time to do right now, but I would rank both Pete Carroll and Doug Peterson very high on that list in this playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very, very high caliber coaching matchup that we get here. I give Russell Wilson the advantage over Wentz in this matchup. One key thing, though, and I think injuries are going to play a big role in this game because both teams are missing key guys in positions that they love to use frequently. Philly, Zach Ertz is not trending in the right direction to play in this game. That is a massive, massive loss. Even though they have a great backup tight end in Dallas Goedert and he's filled in nicely, their ability to use both those guys on the field at the same time would have been something that probably would have been used frequently in a playoff matchup like this. So if Ertz is not able to go, that's a huge loss. And on the Seattle side of things, Jack, this is a team, I know we talk about, how good Russ is and how he can extend plays. They've always loved to run the football. And they're missing their top two backs in this game, in Chris Carson, who's out for the year, and Rashad Penny, who's out for the year, who was a very promising backup back, very frustrating backup back for anybody, fantasy owners who own Chris Carson this year, because he could steal a couple TDs.
And I could not tell you who the starting running back is now.
You should know him very, very well. He was signed a week ago, and he played last.
Yeah. Marshawn
Mr.
Lynch.
Skittles himself, Marshawn Lynch. But that's the type of thing. Like, look, Chris Carson's a great back. Rashad Penny was having a nice little backup a year as a backup. I don't think they're going to be able to get the same out of beast mode as they are those two guys. Now, imagine beast mode breaks a couple, and all of a sudden I'm looking like an idiot here. But I do think that both teams, those are big weapons that you're missing on both sides of the ball with Ertz, and then the two running backs for Seattle. I think that plays a key role, and maybe this is the second highest over-under. I wouldn't be surprised kind of if this was more of a low-scoring affair.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be the high-scoring game like the one that we're getting before it with Minnesota and New Orleans. I want to talk about Seattle. Okay. I do not trust them at all. At all. I do not.
Did their playoff game last year where me and you both picked them over Dallas in Dallas ruin that for you?
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, it feels like fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Okay, fair. Why? What is it about this team you don't trust?
Okay, so last year we were so confident in Russell Wilson is going to have this amazing game in Dallas on the road, and he played well, but Dak outplayed him. Dak had a great game at home, and I don't trust this team. Here's the thing with the Seahawks, especially this year. They had 11 wins this year. How many games do you think they won by one possession?
They were probably one of them that won a lot of one-possession games. I bet Russ is, and that's another note, Russ to me would be very high on the clutch rating in terms of a quarterback.
Interesting.
So I would think they won a lot of one-score games. Did they?
They won 10. 10 of their 11 wins. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And Russell, here's the thing. He's so amazing to watch. He has these games where he just does stuff in the fourth quarter where he's a different player in the fourth quarter. I think he is up there for clutch. Then he had a couple other games like the San Francisco game where they somehow won. They threw an interception in overtime. And I think their defense is a little underrated. I think there is some talent there. I think their receivers are good, but it's just they're cutting it too close. I think they've skated by, and I think sometimes when you win close games, that does make you a better team. But, I mean, I'll look at some of these games. Week 1, 21-20 over the Bengals. 28-26 over the Steelers against Mason Rudolph in Week 2. Let's see. 32-28 over the Browns. I think they play down to their competition.
So do you think they do that in a road playoff game, though?
Well, they did last year.
Fair. Although Dallas was a pretty good team a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
I don't agree with you on the defensive side of things on Seattle. I don't think it's a very good defense anymore. Okay. I think you look at them from the standpoint of what they used to be, obviously, with Legion of Boom. And I think it's been more of a Russ Carey job for this team. I mean, they were 22nd in points given up this year in terms of teams. I really don't, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't love a whole lot about this Seattle team apart from Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll coaching. And I'm not a Pete Carroll fan by any means. Actually, I don't like him one bit. But I will admit he's a very good football coach. So I do think that, those are the only... You look at Seattle, what pieces do you like? So you like their defense.
Okay, I like Clowney. I think Clowney made some huge plays for them that really kept them in a lot of games. Okay, he was a huge game changer for them.
Clowney is definitely a fair piece.
I like DK Metcalf and I like Tyler Lockett a lot. I think Tyler Lockett is one of the most underrated players in the NFL. He always gets open. He always catches anything that's thrown to him, and he's got breakaway speed.
Yeah, Lockett is a good receiver. To me, though, he's not a great number one receiver, and that's what he has to be on this team. That's the only thing, in my opinion, that where I would kind of be like, Lockett's the one. He's going to see the one corner. Granted, Philly's corners aren't great, but that's the type of thing I look at with Lockett. I do think Metcalf, though, he had a great rookie season. He's a very solid number 2 receiver. So that's fair.
Here's the last thing I will say about Russell. I think it's like this guy has the highest of highs out of quarterbacks. I mean, maybe Mahomes is up there, but like when he's on, he is unbelievable. He's must-watch TV, even when he's not playing at his very best. He's one of the most exciting players to watch in the league. He's an awesome guy. He throws the best deep balls out of anyone, probably. You see those deep balls, and they're just so beautiful. They're just like, oh my gosh, that was a perfect throw over two corners where only his guy could catch it.
Yeah, and along with that too, I do think this team has the ability to play from behind because of the way Russell Wilson can play, and that to me makes them a little bit dangerous. So even if Philly gets up in this game, there is no chance in heck that I think Seattle is one bit out of it at any point.
Yeah, but then the other thing, I just get so confused with this guy because sometimes he takes these bad sacks, and now maybe that's because of the offensive line. He tries to do a little too much when he scrambles. He takes some really bad sacks where they'll move back 20 yards. But really the big thing is just like, if you're looking at a season, the first 8 to 10 weeks, he was in pole position for MVP.
Yeah, he was one of the hot picks, yeah.
And then we saw maybe 5 or 6 games straight where he was good, but he wasn't great. And and Lamar just stayed amazing. They lost and they only put up 13 points against the Cardinals team that had Brett Hundley at the helm 2 weeks ago. I just never know what to make of this team. And it seems like this is why I can't put Russ in the Legends category. And maybe he will get there someday. But sometimes I just get, when I'm like, I'm counting on Russ, I get a little let down sometimes.
Yeah, and another thing to note, too, heading into this postseason, Seattle's lost 3 of 4. Yeah. Including their last 2. And that was a monster game last week, by the way, against the Niners, because the Niners ended up getting the 1 seed because of it. Yeah. If they didn't win that game, they were all the way to the 5 seed. So there was a lot on the line. Seattle would have had a home playoff game had they won last week. But I think it's fair to note, like I noted on the other side of things, Philly's won 4 in a row. Seattle's coming in losing 3 of 4. So these are 2 teams that have kind of been trending in opposite directions.
Yeah, and that was the last point that I was right about to bring up. So when I just look at this stuff, I look at a team with momentum. I look at a team at home and playing a team that has wavered here a little down the stretch, and we don't really know what to make of. Hasn't really blown anyone out in a big game. Not to say that you have to blow teams out, but I'd like to just see a couple of win by 2 scores against one of these bad teams. And I can't count on Seattle. I can't do it 2 years in a row. Last year, I thought they were going to NFC title game. I don't want to be burned 2 years in a row, Jordan.
That's fair. I am taking the chance that I potentially will be burned 2 years in a row here. I just don't think Philly's offense is one bit dynamic. Even though I don't love the Seattle defense, I just don't think Philly has very many guys either that kind of scare you. So I do think this is going to be more of a low-scoring game, even though neither of these defenses are very elite. I think both are bottom half in terms of points given up a game. I think Russ makes one more play than Wentz does in this ball game. I think it's going to be low-scoring, maybe like 20-17, something along those lines.
That sounds right.
Yeah, this is a tough one, though, because it wouldn't surprise me if the Eagles rode the home field, rode the hot hand here, and came out and kind of won a football game. But I'm going to stick with my Seattle pick, 2017. I can't think about it too much more. I'll have to flip-flop.
Hey, if this was Foles on the Eagles, would you pick the Eagles?
Jack, we're not going there. This is Wentz's first playoff game, correct?
Yeah, it is.
Too, I think. So that could also play a role here. There's a serious differential in terms of experience at the QB position.
Yeah, that's why Wentz is a mystery. He is in that last tier. And I guess really what I was saying, I don't really know if they're tiers of quarterbacks, more just categories, I should say.
Yeah, that's fair. Tiers almost makes it sound like we're ranking.
Yeah, and we're not.
Just putting them in, given experience, given talent.
Yeah, and I think you could even put Lamar Jackson in that middle ground category too, because he has played in the playoffs, didn't play well, but he was going to win the MVP this year. So what do you make of him?
True. Very true. I would probably have him in that last group still.
Yeah.
Until we see something at a playoff level.
Yeah, I think I would agree. But I think there's a case to be made for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think a lot of those cases could be made in this postseason. Well, we might figure some things out.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's Wentz's first playoff game. And Doug Peterson, though, look, the Eagles have done this now the last 2 years where they finish the season with momentum. They get into the playoffs. They barely do, but they won their games down the stretch. And it's like they start playing playoff football in November.
I think that this is it's at least a close statistic, Jack. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I think the last 3 seasons, Doug Peterson's football teams in December are 10-2.
That's
so they play
unbelievable.
really, really good football down the stretch. To be honest, Jack, when it matters.
Yeah, and so that's what I want to go with. Even though I love Pete Carroll, even though I really like Russell Wilson, I love watching Russell Wilson, and I want to see him, I want to see what he does at his highest of highs all the time. I want to see Russell Wilson go in and win that MVP and not have the season where he's phenomenal for 10 games and then 5 or 6 games where he just kind of averages himself out to a Pro Bowler.
Very fair. That would set up, if Philly wins this game, that would set up them most likely, given the Saints win at San Francisco next week. Would that be a double-digit point spread?
Saints and
No, Philly in San Francisco next week. Would that be a double-digit point spread?
I think that'd be about 9.
It would have to be pretty big, I would think.
Yeah, but it depending on how Philly wins this week.
True. Yeah, maybe they win in dominating fashion. Okay, yeah, that's fair.
So we'll see. We'll get there. But I'm just going to go with what I've seen out of Philly over the last 2 years, even though it's a different quarterback. And you could say Philly the last 3 years. It's really hard for me to compare what they did 2 years ago because they had a dominant regular season and didn't just peak down the stretch. But last year they sort of whimpered in, and then they played great football down the stretch and got in.
Okay, fair enough. Let's do one fun thing, Jack. Now that we finished the 4 games,
I didn't give.
Oh yeah, you haven't officially given it. Let's hear it.
Okay, so I'll go. You know what? I'll go 20-14 Philly.
20-14. So you have low scoring as well, because the over/under in this game is 46. That to me seems high.
It does, especially because
it's going to be colder in Philly.
Yeah,
tough environment.
I think if Seattle's running backs were healthy. Which is really, by the way, has been. I've been a little tough on Russ. If his running backs had been healthy, this team, his numbers would have been better. The team probably would have played better down the stretch, especially because they love to dominate time of possession. So I think it would be a high-scoring game if at least one of those running backs was healthy.
Yeah, I think that would definitely help, and I think that would help Seattle's chances in this game a lot as well. I get the fun story with Beast Mode, but I'm not sold he brings what the other two would have brought in.
Yeah, I like Beast Mode on the goal line, but I don't know if I want him on.
You want him as your possession back?
Or just an every down back.
Yeah, fair. Very fair.
So, all right, those are our picks for the week, and I guarantee people they're listening to this, it's Monday or Tuesday now, and they're laughing in their cars, thinking of how dumb Jack is.
Could very easily be the other way too, because I think we picked the same 3 teams and then differed on the last game.
Well, I did go Texans. You had the Bills.
Oh, okay. You went okay. So we swapped on 2.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have some bragging rights to discuss on Monday. Yeah. It sounds like. Fair enough.
And it's funny. These are the 2 games that neither of us have a whole lot of confidence in.
Well, yeah. Well, that
would be 3 and 4.
That would be exactly why we differ here.
All right, what you got for me here, Jordan? I want to hear this.
All right, let's do one fun thing here. Pick one higher seed and one lower seed you think could win, most likely to win in a blowout.
Most likely to win in a blowout. Okay. I'm going to go Chiefs.
No. First round.
Okay.
My pick for low seed would have been the Saints. I think the
Oh,
Saints.
you're counting the Saints as a low seed.
Yeah, any 3 or 4.
Oh.
So any 3 or 4
Okay.
seed.
I thought low
the
seed
other
was 5 or 6.
Oh, got you. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, that's a little. Okay, but one 3 or 4 seed you think was going to win in a blowout, and then one 5 or 6 seed.
Well, give me your 5 or 6.
Okay, so if I'm picking one team, one 5 or 6 seed that's going to win in a blowout, I think has the highest chance, and one 3 or 4. I think the Saints to me are the 3 or 4, and they're kind of the obvious pick I think for this. Given in the Superdome, I think they have the ability to run up the score. Kirk struggles early, maybe, and it gets to him mentally. Saints are my 3 or 4 pick that I would go, and then this is going to be a shocking one, Jack. But I think the Titans.
Oh my goodness!
I think the Titans, because of how hot they are coming in. Wow. I don't think New England's a team that can play from behind. I really like the way their team's built to play with a lead. They play so well with a lead with Henry. That opens up so many things in the pass game. Like I can't see Buffalo blowing out Houston. I think Philly's going to be close, and I just picked New Orleans as the most likely to potentially blow out Minnesota. Jack, I think the Titans are my pick, and I think it's a shocking one, and that's why I think what made this one kind of fun, this question kind of fun. Is that I think coming in hot, New England's been struggling. I don't love New England's offense. Maybe the Titans come in and roll. Now, I didn't pick them. They didn't pick them to win the game, but they would be my most likely to potentially blow out.
As my 5 or 6, could I count Philly in that category? Because they're an underdog?
Oh, you're making me bend the rules for you, Jack.
Because really, I'm going to say I don't see any of these 5 or 6 blowing anyone out.
Okay, yeah, that's what makes it fun.
Okay.
So, no, I'm not going to allow you to do that.
So I have to do this.
Yes, you have to pick a 5 or 6 seed that you think if any of these 5 or 6 teams, one of them that's most likely to potentially blow somebody out.
All right, well then I guess I'll go Bills because my logic with Houston was basically that game could go any way possible. I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay.
I really don't. Okay, because I don't see the Vikings blowing out the Saints. I don't see the Seahawks blowing out the Eagles. And I really do not see this Titans projection that you are foreseeing.
I'm not necessarily foreseeing it. I just wanted to have some fun. It'd be fun to see the Patriots get blown out at Foxborough.
Because I was going to go the other way. I was going to say potentially the Patriots
could blow them out. Yeah, I think that would be a potential one too.
Yeah, and then obviously the Saints, just because the reason why the Saints make so much sense as a pick is because they're you give me all 8 teams, which team's going to put up the most points this week? I go Saints.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
would agree with that. I think it makes sense.
To be clear, I do think that's going to be a close game. I think all these games, for the most part, are going to be one possession.
We picked our scores.
Yeah, I just don't want the listeners to be lighting me up on Twitter and saying like,
you
"Wow,
said they were going to blow them out." Yeah, listeners, please go by the scores we initially selected. This was just a little fun thing that if one of these games is going to end up in a blowout, who are you going to pick?
All right, you got anything else for me today? Any other fun stuff?
No, I think that's it. I cannot wait, Jack, until these games. I can't wait till Saturday.
Yeah, me neither.
I've been sitting here all week just waiting to do absolutely nothing on Saturday and Sunday, except just want to sit on my couch and watch these games.
I know you're not a huge college football guy, but did you enjoy the college football playoff?
The playoff, I enjoy watching Joe Burrow play the quarterback position. I thought, obviously, it probably would have been better for college football if it was a more competitive game, but I enjoyed watching him play. And the other game, I enjoyed it. I'm not a huge college football guy. I like watching potential NFL prospects in college games. And with those 2 games, I think you saw a lot of top talent, obviously. So I think, from that standpoint, I did enjoy it. How about you?
Oh, I had a really fun time. I mean, it seems every single year we get one blowout, at least, and some years 2 blowouts. I think I was fairly confident that's what we're going to get in that LSU-Oklahoma game. Now, that second game,
Mm-hmm.
What a great game. That was an awesome, really fun Clemson, Ohio State. And really, it was tough to see one of those two teams lose because it was such a weird year. It was like there were three great to really good teams, and then the fourth team just kind of got in there at the last second because a lot of teams lost in that fourth spot. But that was a really, really fun game. I really enjoyed it.
This, I think this year kind of silenced the critics or the people that have been pushing for the 8-team tournament in a way, shape, or form. To me, it did. I don't know about you. What do we really want to see LSU play an 8 seed and then play Oklahoma?
Well, okay. So I still want to see the expansion.
I get the expansion. How does that work? Do you cut one regular season game? Is that how you...
and get rid of the week where Alabama is going to play the Citadel.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
non-conference game.
I'm fine with it. But this is not a good year, I don't think.
No, it doesn't help the argument.
No, that was my point. Is I don't think it really helped the case to advance it.
And Jake Poliga and I talked about this a few weeks ago, that it really was convenient. There wasn't a whole lot of debate over who these 4 teams should be. It worked out really well. So that's why I think ended up this could be the strongest 4-team playoff that we get.
That we've had so far?
Yeah, despite the blowout. And I mean, even if we go let's say we go in the 8 in the future, which I think could very well happen, because I think
it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, NCAA is going to look. There's more money to be made.
Yep.
There's a way we can make this work, and it's going to be fun. And so, I think it will happen eventually. So, in the grand scheme of things, this could end up being, depending on what we get in this national championship, it could go down as the best, well-rounded 4-team playoff ever, despite this lopsided blowout.
Yeah, I thought that second game was fantastic, and I really like how it ends up being the number 1 pick most likely in Burrow this year against the most likely number 1 pick Lawrence next year. So I think that's definitely a great storyline.
Yeah, and it's the Tiger Bowl. You got Clemson and LSU, both Tigers.
Oh, good call. Didn't even think of that.
So I'll be bringing some coverage of that in a couple weeks. Unfortunately, I don't think we've had this bye week in the middle before.
I think have we not? It feels like there's always these weeks in between these games. I feel like we were waiting like 8 weeks between when the season ended for that first round matchup.
I think they've probably done it in the past, but for some reason, I just feel like things are just really weird because the game happened. It was like the 29th of December when normally it's in January, and the NFL season ended before January. So I think I'm just really thrown off by all that.
Okay, potentially. I'm pretty sure there's always doesn't it always seem like we wait for these games forever?
Kind of.
Yeah, that is the one.
Well, it was even worse when there was no playoff, and then we waited a whole month.
True.
Yeah, that's.
Well, and now they're like squeezing all these bowl games kind of in between these games, which I think is fine. It fills the void for college football fans. But I mean, think about it. I think IU plays Tennessee tonight. It's Thursday when we're recording this.
That's correct.
And when's the last time IU touched a football field? It was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So it's like, do they really need to wait 3 or 4 weeks to play their bowl game? It's just interesting. I don't hate it though. I like that they fill the void in between the big ones.
Okay, here's a fun question, and since it's fun asking a not a huge college football guy this. Do you have a favorite bowl game that isn't the playoff? Because I do.
No.
Okay.
I do not. I don't. I watch for the players, not necessarily the specific, bowls or specific teams. Crusaders, unfortunately, aren't playing in a bowl game this season, so.
Mine is definitely the Rose Bowl because it has the most. I was going to say,
I think that's the common pick, isn't it?
Yeah,
it would be.
You got the Rose Parade, which is always really fun, and then there's the Rose Bowl. And there's the most tradition behind it because it's always going to be Pac-12 against the Big Ten.
It worked out as well. It was a very good game, wasn't it?
It was Oregon a great game.
Wisconsin, right?
Yep. Oregon got the win.
Yep. Yeah, in late fashion, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so you even ended up getting a good game out of it, Jack.
Okay, Jordan, my last question for you here.
Mm-hmm.
Your Super Bowl pick. You want to make it right now?
Yeah, I feel like I should just stick with what I had in preseason, Jack. Just because
Remind me again.
I mean, I feel very different about the Pats than I did probably heading into the season, and I would probably say KC would probably be my AFC favorite. But I'm going to stick with the Saints out of the NFC. I'm just going to stick with Saints Pats just because that's what I went with the preseason. Let's see if we can keep the streak here going. After I just said the Pats were the potential most likely to get blown out by a 6.
This is reminding me of last year, though, where my Super Bowl pick didn't make the playoffs. And this year I picked the Rams over the Patriots. Last year I picked the Vikings over the Patriots. And I modified my pick in our wild card weekend preview show. I picked the Patriots over the Rams. I was correct. Let's see if I can have some strange bizarro streak here and get it going here. So I'm going to go with KC, who I had as my AFC favorite coming into the year. Peaking at the right time. They got all the momentum. Everyone's healthy. I'm excited about that team. And then on the NFC side, you've converted me. I'm on the Saints. I really like what the Saints are doing. And I think from an entertainment perspective, I think it would be the best with potentially the matchup that you have, because whenever you get the Patriots, the stage always feels bigger, and you've got Brady's legacy on the line, and which really shouldn't be on the line, but you got Brady. And I think if you got Brady versus Rodgers or Brady versus Breeze, like those are probably the two best potential Super Bowl matchups in terms of if you're looking at this lens as a journalist of what's going to be the most fun in terms of media stories going into that Super Bowl. I think those would be the two best matchups.
Yeah, and I think maybe the secondary one behind those would be KC. And is it Mahomes' time officially? So yeah, you have the Chiefs and Saints, correct?
Yeah, I got the Chiefs and the Saints, and I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
We're agreeing a lot here.
Yeah,
because I think the Chiefs to me would be my favorite to come out of the AFC, but I'm going to stick with my pick of the Pats just because of my preseason pick.
So you got a little double prediction there. You got two teams you're riding.
The Pats are my team out of the AFC. I need full credit for that. I'm not splitting it up into two if it ends up happening.
Well, it'll be very fun to watch. So, Jordan, we are done for this week. This was a lot of fun. We're going to have to do something next week on Monday. I'll see you on Monday.
Sounds good, Jack. Thanks for having me.
All right, and lastly, is there anything you would like to plug, social media handles, anything of that nature?
Just my Twitter, @RealJMorandini. I'll probably do some NFL playoff picks type talk there. So just my Twitter today, Jack. Thanks.
Great. All right, see you next week.
See you then.
So that does it for my conversation with Jordan Morandini on the first weekend of NFL playoff action. Wild card weekend, baby. A lot of fun talking with him and getting everyone set for the 2020 NFL playoffs. If you like what you heard on this podcast today, subscribe to the Jack Vita Show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever it is that you get your podcast, and you will never miss an episode. You will get the episodes right away as they are uploaded to the App Store before anyone else does. If you are a subscriber, you will not want to miss out on any episodes. Please leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes if you have not done so already. Does a lot of great for the podcast. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I've got stickers that are available to you, the listeners. Send me a direct message on Twitter or Instagram if you would like to get a sticker. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram @JackVitaShow. Very simple, @JackVitaShow. Always post lots of thoughts on the sports and TV shows that I'm watching on there. Well, that does it for this week's edition of the Jack Vita Show. Come back on Monday to hear us recap Wildcard Weekend and get you set for the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. Until next time, I'm Jack Vita. Bring in the Dancing Lobsters.